Meeting to order then. It's 10:31, Tuesday, August 27th, 2024. We're here for a meeting with the St. Joe National Forest Land and Water Conservation. Is that correct? Yes.
Yeah, yes, basically, yeah. I can.
Okay. And so I'm not sure what we're talking about, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, that sounds great. So I'm Jessica Inwood with Western Rivers Conservancy, and I'm here. Basically, the gist of it is we're here today to request the county commissioner's support for the St. Joe National Forest to eventually acquire a private inholding from Western Rivers Conservancy with the use of the land and water conservation funds. So I'll go into more detail about all of exactly what that means. But first, I'll just start with a little intro. So Western Rivers Conservancy is a nonprofit organization, and we're based in Portland. We've been operating for about over 30 years. And we work in 11 Western states to protect the rivers of the West. So we do that for the protection of fish and wildlife, to protect cold water streams, and for to create public access for all. And so how we work is we basically are an organization that works with private landowners to buy land, and then we typically hold it for short term until we transfer that property to a long-term owner, which is typically a public agency or a tribe. So we work with all sorts of different groups from, I recently did a project where we transferred the property to a county, to federal agencies like Forest Service, which this project is working with the Forest Service, and state government agencies, so all sorts, and also a number of tribes. And so one of the things that we do when we're working on a project to acquire property, which again, I'll go into detail about this specific one, is to meet with county commissioners and tell them about the project and gain their support or neutrality on our acquisition before we buy the property. And then we also, the agency that is acquiring the property from us also would like the support before they apply for funding. So it's a way to just make sure the county is aware of the project and what we're working on. And so I'm here today also with Ben Ballard from Potlatch, which he can introduce himself, and he's the Potlatch is the landowner of the property that we are looking to acquire right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm Ben Ballard. I'm the real estate manager for Potlatch Deltic in North Idaho. As you know, we're a large landowner. We have about 625,000 acres across 4 counties. And I've been scratching my brain to try to remember exactly how many are in Shoshone County right now. But it's north of 100,000, I believe, probably maybe 150. So I manage our real estate program. That includes buying and selling property for the company. We're always interested in acquiring additional property. And the property we're talking about, we haven't owned it for terribly long at all, really. But we're always interested in acquiring more for our forest management activities. As you may know, we have a sawmill and plywood mill complex in the town of St. Mary's, which pretty much all of our Shoshone County, Bennewa County, and a lot of our Latah County lands flow towards that sawmill, and then we sell forest products, logs to other customers as well. So Potlatch's bread and butter business is timber management. We've been here since before the fire, and we expect to be here for a long time to come. So,
So this property that we're looking to acquire, it's about 600 acres, and you have a little handout. I have a color copy that I can give you as well. And so on the back of this is a map showing you the location of the property. So it's along a mile of the St. Joe River, and it's just about 2 miles west of Avery. And it also has over half a mile of Fishhook Creek running through it. So when we look for properties, we're looking for properties that seems to be like high importance for us and then also for the long-term owner. And so in this case, we found this property and had started talking with Ben and Potlatch, where it has a mile of the river, and was in talking with the Forest Service was really, they had a lot of interest in acquiring it. For one, it is an inholding in St. Joe National Forest. And it also has a lot of frontage of St. Joe River, so has a great opportunity to provide permanent public access along the river, and then also on the property itself for all sorts of things, hunting, and all different types of recreation. So it just was a really good fit for us. So in this case, as I mentioned, what we would do is we would buy it from Potlatch and then hold on to it while the Forest Service works on their application for funding, and that's through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And that funding source, if you're not familiar with it, it's pretty neat. It's permanent funding, about $900 million a year nationally. And I think it's about 300 million or so that goes into land acquisitions for federal agencies like the Forest Service. And it's not tax dollar money. It's all funding through federal oil and gas revenues. So leases. So it's a great funding source that doesn't affect the taxpayer, which is really nice. So as I mentioned, for us and for the Forest Service and for Potlatch, this is a really great opportunity to have the Forest Service acquire the property and open up the land for public access. It's got really nice, it's pretty flat on the property near the river. So there's some access points and parking availability. And so it just kind of broadens the places that the public can go and tourists can come to. It also helps a lot for the Forest Service with management. As I mentioned, it's an inholding, so it's surrounded by Forest Service land. And so by kind of acquiring that whole, they're able to manage across the land. That helps a lot with wildfire protection, being able to do fuels reductions and silviculture treatments kind of across it, which is really helpful and actually saves some money. It also then is protection for bull trout, which is a federally threatened species. So there's a bunch of restoration work happening upstream on the St. Joe River, and there's a lot of potential for other restoration projects like Fishhook Creek and along that stretch, which is pretty exciting for folks. And what else? I think that's kind of the gist of the project. I know it's kind of could be a little bit confusing, all the different pieces and the specific ask. So I'm happy to clarify anything and answer any questions that you have. But yeah, it was great talking with Commissioner Zimmerman last week, a couple weeks ago. I provided a draft letter of support that could be something that you all could use as something to work off of, if it is something that you are willing to support. And timing wise, we're looking for support pretty soon as the Land and Water Conservation Fund application for fiscal year 26 is due September 13th by the Regional Forest Service office. So that's kind of where we're at. And I'm happy to answer any questions and tell you more about it.
Any questions from the board?
I don't have any. I think it's a great idea.
When would this take place?
Yeah, so what we're working right now on kind of final negotiations amongst ourselves for us to acquire the property, and we have kind of about a year to acquire it once we're under contract, and then the Forest Service would acquire it from us after that. So the timeline, we have to wait for the federal budget to come out in like February 2025, and then sometime after that, once it's delegated and then given. So it's probably, I want to say, a year and a half to 2 years out from actual acquisition by the Forest Service.
And this is going to allow public access to lands.
When you get the land and it's in your control,
Yeah.
There's no change in public access or anything like that?
Right, that's a great question. Yeah, and we'll likely own it for a short term, maybe a few months, maybe. It depends on how things go with federal government timing. But yeah, we don't have any plans to change anything. So we would allow for public access and manage the property. We have a full-time stewardship director who takes care of all the lands that we have under our ownership.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And we talked before, and I know there was a property tax that we would, as a county, would lose. And I talked to you about that, and it was under, was it $1,000 a year, do you remember?
I think it was something like that.
Something less than that.
Something
little
less
less,
than
yeah.
1,000 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just to bring that up, just that, whenever we take it out of private and put it into public. But I think I believe the access for the public for, forever
Mhm.
is really,
Worth the trade.
worth the trade.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'll just point out that, if you look upriver from there, the only section of private ground above this would end up being the town of Avery. And you're not gonna get that into public hands, but as you work your way, from there all the way, I mapped it yesterday, all the way to the top to the lake that the St. Joe comes out of is all currently federally owned. So this would be just stretching that federal ownership aside from Avery. If that goes into Fed, then you've got another 1-2 miles past that. So it's kind of a connectivity wise, a 3-for-1, so to speak,
And do you work with just the federal government? Or would the state, like something like this, if the state of Idaho was interested in it,
Mhm.
would they have a chance, at this piece of property, if
Right.
before the federal government, or are you already going
Right.
down or
Right. Yeah. At this point, we're working with Forest Service
Okay.
because they're working on their land and water conservation fund
Okay.
application. We do work with anybody, any public agency, like a county, state. At this point, it's with them. We typically have like a plan A, B, and C when it comes to these because since we're not long-term owners, we're always like looking to see who would be acquiring the property. So if something wasn't to work out with the Forest Service, we always are happy to and want to look at other options.
Okay.
Okay. Well, this is an action item meeting, so we could take action on this today if the commissioners feel like that.
May I ask if our P and Z has any input since he joined the meeting?
I actually joined from a P&Z standpoint, but really just economic development and my interest in the forest. But no, I think it's a great idea. I agree with your question, Jeff, about if this could have the opportunity to stay in state ownership versus federal. But I don't think it's a hindrance. And in this particular case, down in this area, there's not a lot of any state endowment land versus like there is up in North Fork. And so it wouldn't be a good connectivity thing for the state to own this acres. Whereas being joined with the Forest Service, it just makes their management of it that much easier, more doable. Certainly, we'd like to see if there's any opportunity for projects like creating put-in spots and stuff where they could work with Fish and Game like they typically do to promote, put in boat ramps and
Right.
access points and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Put those kinds of projects together. P&Z standpoint, we always push for those
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah.
They're nice to have.
Do you have those mapped out? Where they are now? I mean, I know Huckleberry Campground has
There's
one.
only a handful of them.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the state and federal campgrounds.
Yeah,
But there's a couple other access points, most of them are the North Fork. But
okay.
But it'd be nice to, if there's a spot for it, to have the federal government to have a project in mind to go in and put in a parking area and put in a place where you could get in and out of the river.
Mhm.
That's
Right. Yeah. And
a growing concern.
Yeah, and the Forest Service, I know when they acquire new lands, and they would have public comment on any changes to the land that they would be looking to do or develop in that case. So yeah.
So you'd have to wait till, if the Fish and Game was interested in putting in a ramp or something like that, you'd have to wait till the Forest Service actually owns the
Once they-
property.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then they would start the planning process.
Okay.
Mhm.
And the thing is, I would certainly always encourage you to be supportive. It's not a fiscal big deal for us. as a county. And so anytime there's that kind of support going to these applications, these grant applications, it always helps those folks make that decision when the locality is supporting it.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further? Well, at this point then, I would entertain a motion, if somebody wants to make a motion to provide our letter of support to this project.
So moved.
So move that we would sign a letter of support for this project.
I'll second.
Seconded. Any last discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
So we might as well just sign this now and give Heather a copy and then,
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Is it dated okay?
It says August 1.
I think that's okay. Right.
Is it?
I'll show you.
I didn't write it.
Just
Oh, I guess.
Would you like me
Is
to
it
change the date to today and then give you a
Sure.
fresh
Yeah,
one?
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And
just
I'm
wouldn't
happy
want it
to.
to be signed and approved
Right,
before
from a
the
different
meeting
date.
to approve
That's
it.
actually, that's a very good point.
Especially
I-
commissioners meeting.
And I could stick around too.
Sorry for being nosy.
No,
Are
no, that's
we-
actually a very good point.
Are we adjourned?
Pardon?
Are we
we are
adjourned?
adjourned.
Okay, thank you.